All right, first question I have to ask. What was the inspiration behind the tie on the sideline last week? I forgot to ask you about that in postgame. But what was the inspiration behind that?
Well, Trussell always wore a tie.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just always felt like that's just, as a head coach, everybody has their style, I guess. And, being around Trussell for 5 years a player and then a year with him, on his coaching staff, and then kind of just following his deal. And even Coach Boughton, when I was with Coach Boughton, that was something that he wore too. So kind of just those two guys kind of, and I'm an old school guy. I grew up, back in when, the Cowboys and all them, and those guys wore the fedora hats and the ties and the sports coats and all that stuff. So that's kind of something that I've always, admired those guys on the sideline that kind of show that, hey, we're in control. It's, it's something that shows that, I guess, you're calm. And maybe, too, it keeps you calm when you know you got a tie on. You don't rip your headphones off and scream and yell. So maybe that helps me stay calm also.
Is that going to be a staple going forward? Should we expect that every week?
That's probably, yeah. And, maybe until it gets cold where you got to bundle up a little more. Yeah. But, that's probably will be the main gear that I wear on game day.
Gotcha. Are you ever going to go full suit? Because I know it was like the vest over the button down. Are you ever going to go full suit?
I can't say never. We'll see.
Gotcha. To the football, actually. Now that you've had a few days to kind of sit on that Morgan game, just what are some of your final thoughts and final takeaways from that game?
I think two things. One, we played hard. We played for 4 quarters. We were down, but never stopped fighting. So those things were very positive to see that, hey, you know what, when things weren't going our way, when we were down, I think at one point it was 20-7, and we just kept fighting back and kept closing the gap. And, I think the real thing, too, is when we blocked the extra point, that showed our guys still had the fight in them, that they were going to keep fighting and gave people in the sidelines like, hey, we're going to keep fighting. And so, seeing those things were good. The bad side is you got to go back and say, hey, again, you can't turn the ball over twice. You can't have costly penalties in big moments of the game. So, you see the fight, but then the thing that we talked about yesterday is that, it's not always about who's bigger, stronger, faster. It's about who's able to play poised and with controlled emotion. That, and to me, that's the biggest thing that, we got to take away from this thing is, we got to play with poise and we got to play with controlled emotions. When things are going on the field, you have to stay poised and locked in. And so if we can clean up, that aspect of the game, then, I think you give yourself a fighting chance on this Saturday.
I know something I forgot to ask after the game on Saturday, just what went into the decision to attempt the onside kick to start the game?
That was just something that we were going to be aggressive. The one thing that, and I put it on me, we were always practicing kicking it the other way. But the biggest thing was just that we were going to be an aggressive team. We're going to pull every punch that we can, and let people know that special teams are very important here, and we're going to work to have something every week. So that is just, we've had some great practices with some great bounce, and so we just didn't get the right bounce at that time. But it was kind of my decision. We've been talking about that 2 weeks prior to the game of, hey, we're going to play aggressive special teams and we're going to work this. And so it wasn't something we just kind of thought up right before. It kind of was in brewing for 2 weeks prior before the first game. So just again, that special teams are important, that I think teams have to be ready to play all three phases of the game, because we're going to make you compete in all three phases of the game.
I know last week at quarterback it was Zealous for 2 and then Mays for 2, and then, Mays kind of had the hot hand with him. Is it going to be similar this weekend, or are you going to stick with the guy?
Yeah, we'll see. Again, I tell people all the time, we have 2 starting quarterbacks. And so kind of see how practice goes during the week. When we came in, we said, hey, Malcolm was going to take 2, and then Chris took 2, Malcolm took 1, Chris took 2 again, Malcolm took 1, and we felt like that was going to get us right about to halftime. 6 possessions takes you about right to halftime, and then kind of see, where we're at that point. Malcolm took us down and we scored right there before the half, and so he kind of had the hot hand and came out, and we just felt like as a staff that, hey, this is the best part to go right now. But that was for last week. This week, I don't know what we're going to do as far as that, but we always have a plan for both quarterbacks, because like I said, we feel blessed. You've got 2 starting quarterbacks back, so we'll have some type of plan ready for this week.
Do you feel like it's going to be one of those things where you're just going to ride kind of 2 quarterbacks until one of them makes it like so obvious that, hey, we just need to stick with this guy, or is it really just a week to week thing?
Yeah, I don't know. You look at, was it a year ago, William and Mary played 2 quarterbacks for the whole year. And I remember our defense all up in arms, because you got to prepare for, 2 guys. And, and again, you watch the game, everybody's mind is, Malcolm's a passing guy, but he ran for 63 yards. Chris is a running guy, but Chris can also throw the ball. So you can't just come in and say, hey, this guy, we got to stop Malcolm because he's a passer, because he ran for 63 yards, and Chris is throwing the ball way better, a lot more accuracy. So you can't go in and say, hey, we're just going to stop him on running the football because he can throw for 200 yards. So, I don't know. I haven't really etched in stone what I wanted to do yet. I know there's been programs that have played 2 quarterbacks the whole year. If it comes down to that, then so be it. If someone really emerges themselves as in the next couple weeks, then that may be the scenario also. So I'm really pretty much doors open for kind of what's going to be the best fit, for us.
I know after the game you talked about how you liked what you saw from the defense. Just now that you've had a little bit more time to look at tape, was there anything specifically that stood out about the defense?
Just they flew around. They played with some confidence. They knew, hey, when certain calls or certain blitzes, and they knew what they were doing. They were executing exactly, where they were supposed to be. Again, we had some breakdowns on 3rd and long, but some adjustment things that we got to do to fix, which is fine. But I just like the fact that, they played hard. They flew around. They tackled pretty much well. There were some missed tackles, but for the most part, guys were flying around, and you could tell they were playing with confidence, like they understood and knew the defensive game plan.
I didn't write it down earlier, but I know when I was looking at the PFF grades earlier, not that PFF is the Bible or anything, but the run defense had the highest grade of all the defensive grades against Morgan. And obviously, we were talking a second ago about how you're going to need to play well against the run this coming weekend.
Yes.
What were your thoughts on last week's run defense, and what are some good that you can take and translate into this week?
I think, being gap sound, again, guys understanding where they fit, in the defense based of what's called, and again, guys getting comfortable and playing. There's, some guys that are in some new positions. You got some new guys on the D-line. You got new guys at the linebacker position. But to see them starting to gel together and communicate, that's the thing that I think, again, you see from week 1 to week 2 that those things will get better because they've now played against another opponent. And so now they can kind of get a better feel for, hey, the guy next to me, hey, what's his strength, what's his weakness, how do I help him, become better at what he needs to do. The one thing I probably would say is we still probably need to communicate a little better as far as linebackers to D-line, getting them moved to a spot that needs to get moved into. But I think the fact that you saw them starting to gel together, I think is a positive thing going in for this week.
Obviously, you got Virginia Union coming in this weekend. What are you expecting from them? Don't give away your trade secrets, but what's the scout?
You better be able to. I don't know if you can stop the run, but you got to be able to control it. They're going to run the football. Coach does a great job of just kind of, that's who he is. I know that you know that you know that I know that we're going to run it, and so you've got to be able to slow it down. I don't think you go in there and say, hey, we're going to stop the run and they're going to get 10 yards rushing for the whole day, which if happened, that would be great. But I think you just got to be able to slow it down and get them playing behind the chains, and if you can do that, then that kind of moves back into your favor if you can get them to get behind the chains. But, they got two scat back type guys and then two big guys, 6'1", 6'2", 220, 230. So they can hit you for different speeds. You got two big guys, they can pound you. And then when you getting pounded, then they bring in their quick guys, and then bang, there they go for 50, 60-yard runs. So being able to, again, this week really being gap savvy, gap sound, they like to trade and things like that, and really being able to communicate and getting lined up. And then, you got to be able to tackle those guys, especially those big guys. Is most of the time they're not getting tackled by one guy. You got to gang tackle them and get them on the ground.
Obviously, this is an old rivalry. I think the first time the two teams played was 1906 or something, or early 1900s.
Right.
I haven't played that much since you guys moved up to FCS. But just what's it like to be a part of something like that?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, it's exciting to us. I mean, there's so many rivalries here, and I think it helps. When you're always getting up for another game. I think it keeps the morale going. That hey, here's another rivalry game that everybody in this area is excited about. They'll have a good following coming down, and a lot of people understand the history of these two teams. So to be a part of that is exciting.